My brother refused to repay the $30,000 I lent him. So I took him to court without second thought. I'm 32. I still remember the desperate knock on my door that would change everything. If someone had told me then that my own brother would betray me in the worst way possible, I wouldn't have believed them. But life has a way of teaching us its harshest lessons when we least expect them. I was sitting at my kitchen table, reviewing listings for homes in the area. The housing market was hot, and with my grandmother's recent inheritance of $50,000, I was finally within reach of my dream of homeownership. My laptop screen glowed with possibilities, modest but charming 3-bedroom houses in quiet neighborhoods, the kind of place where I could see myself building a future. The knock came just as I was calculating mortgage payments. There stood James, my older brother, looking more disheveled than I'd ever seen him. His usually confident demeanor was replaced by something I barely recognized: desperation. "Hey sis," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Can I come in? I need to talk to you about something important." I should have seen the warning signs right there. James never came to me for anything. He was always the golden child, the successful entrepreneur who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. But that night, he looked broken. "Of course," I said, stepping aside. "What's wrong? You look terrible." He collapsed into my kitchen chair, running his hands through his wet hair. "Everything's falling apart, and I don't know what to do anymore." Over the next hour, James poured out his story. His business was failing, drowning in debt and mismanagement. He was 3 months behind on his mortgage, and his credit cards were maxed out. Sarah, his wife of 12 years, was at her breaking point. She said if I can't figure this out by the end of the month, she's taking the kids and moving in with her sister, he confessed, his voice cracking. "I can't lose them, sis. I can't let my kids see their father fail like this." I thought about my niece and nephew, just 10 and 8 years old. The thought of their world being turned upside down made my heart ache. "What about mom and dad?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. James let out a bitter laugh. "They're tapped out. They've been investing in my ventures for years. This time," he shook his head, "they can't help, even if they wanted to." That's when he looked at me with those pleading eyes, the same ones he'd used when we were kids, and he wanted me to take the blame for something he'd done. "I need your help," he said quietly. "I know about Grandma's inheritance." My stomach dropped. Of course he knew. News traveled fast in our family. "I need $30,000, he blurted out. "Just for a year. I'll pay you back with interest 8%. I just need enough to catch up on the mortgage and keep the business afloat until things turn around." I stared at my laptop screen, still open to the real estate listings. My dream of homeownership seemed to flicker before my eyes. That's a lot of money, James. I was planning to use it for a down payment." "Please," he interrupted, his voice breaking. "You're my last hope. I wouldn't ask if I had any other option. Think about your nephew and niece. Think about their home, their stability." He reached across the table and grabbed my hand. "I promise I'll pay you back. Every penny, plus interest. Just help me save my family." I looked into his eyes, wet with tears, and saw my big brother, the one who had taught me to ride a bike, who had defended me from bullies in middle school. Despite our complicated relationship, despite the years of feeling second best, he was still my brother. "Okay," I said finally. "But we're doing this properly. We need a written agreement." James's relief was palpable. "Of course, whatever you need. You're saving my life here, sis." The next day, we met at a notary's office. I had drawn up a loan agreement specifying the terms: $30,000 with 8% interest to be repaid within 1 year. As we signed the papers, James chuckled. "Always the careful one, aren't you?" he said, signing with a flourish. "When it comes to this much money." Absolutely. Looking back, I wish I'd been even more careful. The first few months were encouraging. James would call regularly with updates about how things were improving. His voice was lighter, more like his old self. "The business is picking up," he'd say. "We just landed a new client. Things are finally turning around." but gradually, the updates became less frequent. The tone of our conversations shifted. When I'd bring up the loan, there was always an excuse. My kid needed emergency dental work, he'd explain. Sarah's car broke down. The business had an unexpected expense. I'll catch up soon, I promise. Each excuse seemed reasonable on its own, but they started piling up. Meanwhile, his social media told a different story. I'll never forget the day I was scrolling through Facebook on my lunch break and saw his post. Finally got my dream home theater set up. 85-inch OLED TV, Dolby Atmos surround sound system, and custom leather recliners. Movie night at the Our Place. The price tag for that setup alone had to be at least $15,000. The hits kept coming. Every weekend seemed to bring new evidence of his comfortable lifestyle. There he was at Ocean City Beach, staying at the luxury oceanfront resort, a family getaway that, according to the resort's website, cost at least $500 per night. The next month, it was pictures of his newly renovated kitchen, complete with marble countertops, a massive island, and professional-grade stainless steel appliances. The renovations had to cost at least $50,000, based on my research. What really got to me were the casual shopping sprees. Designer clothes for the kids, a new Peloton bike for Sarah, the latest iPhone pre-ordered on release day. Each purchase was like a slap in the face, knowing he still owed me money that was supposed to be for my future. By the second year, my dream of homeownership had slipped away. The market had exploded, and properties I'd once considered were now far out of reach. I was stuck in my rental, watching the prices climb higher and higher while my brother seemed to be living his best life. During a family dinner, I finally confronted him. "James, we need to talk about the loan." He immediately tensed. "Come on, sis, not now. We're having a nice family dinner." "Then when?" "You keep avoiding this conversation. It's been 2 years. Things are still tight," he said, but he couldn't meet my eyes. "The business is just starting to recover." "Really?" I pulled out my phone and showed him his own Facebook post from the previous week, a picture of his new outdoor kitchen. "Seems like some things aren't so tight." Our mother intervened then, always the peacekeeper. "Now, honey, I'm sure your brother is doing his best. Families should support each other." I did support him, I snapped, to the tune of $30,000. The tension at the dinner table was thick enough to cut with a knife. James made some excuse about checking on the kids and disappeared for the rest of the evening. By the third year, I was done with the excuses. After yet another avoided call and another social media post about his family vacation to Disney World, I drove to his house unannounced. "James, we need to talk about the money." Now, he didn't even look up from his computer. That was 5 years ago. Ancient history. You can't expect me to put my whole life on hold over something that happened so long ago. The casual dismissal of my sacrifice, of the trust I'd placed in him, hit me like a physical blow. "Ancient history? Are you serious right now?" He finally looked at me, and I didn't recognize the person I saw. There was no trace of the desperate brother who had shown up at my door that rainy night. No sign of the person who had promised to pay me back every penny. "Look," he said, his voice condescending, "I'm sorry if you're struggling, but I have a family to think about. I can't just." "I have the signed agreement," I interrupted. "It's notarized. Remember." He laughed, actually laughed. "Come on, sis. Are you really going to go legal over this? We're family." That was the moment everything changed. I realized that to him, family was just a convenient excuse, a way to manipulate me into doing what he wanted. He had never intended to pay me back. The legal battle that followed was ugly. My lawyer was a seasoned family law expert who specialized in cases just like mine. When we first met, she laid out our strategy clearly. "The notarized agreement is solid," she explained, spreading the documents across her desk. "But we need to show a pattern of willful avoidance and financial capability to repay." We spent weeks building the case. I provided screenshots of every social media post showing his luxurious purchases, bank statements showing his minimal attempt at repayment, and a timeline of our communications where he acknowledged the debt but made excuses. We even obtained records of his recent home renovation loans and property improvements through public records. The court proceedings were tense. I'll never forget walking into the courtroom and seeing James there with his lawyer, dressed in an expensive suit, looking more annoyed than concerned. The hearing lasted 4 hours. James's lawyer tried every trick in the book. First, they argued the statute of limitations had expired, but my lawyer quickly pointed out that the notarized agreement's terms were still within the legal time frame. Then they claimed the money was a gift, but our text messages clearly showed otherwise. The most dramatic moment came when my lawyer presented James's social media posts, contrasting them with his claims of financial hardship. Side by side, we saw his emails to me claiming he couldn't afford to repay the loan next to his Instagram posts about his new car and fancy vacations. Your Honor, my lawyer argued, Mr. Anderson claims financial inability to repay while simultaneously spending tens of thousands on luxury items. This shows not only the capability to repay, but a willful disregard for his legal obligation to his sister. James's face turned red as the judge examined the evidence. His lawyer attempted to argue that his social media presence was necessary for his business image, but the judge wasn't buying it. The judge took off her glasses and looked directly at James. Mr. Anderson, this court takes familial financial agreements very seriously. The evidence clearly shows you have the means to repay this loan but have chosen not to. Your sister provided this money in good faith, with clear terms that you agreed to and notarized. The ruling was decisive. The judge ordered James to pay the full amount plus the agreed-upon 8% interest, along with my legal fees. She also set up a structured payment plan. He had to pay $5,000 per month until the debt was cleared, with wage garnishment if he failed to comply. The family fallout was immediate and severe. James called me the night of the ruling, his voice full of venom. Happy now? He spat. You've just destroyed this family over money. I hope it was worth it. Our parents were devastated. Mom called me crying, begging me to drop the lawsuit. He's your brother, she pleaded. Families should forgive each other. Forgiveness doesn't pay my rent, Mom, I replied. And it doesn't excuse what he did. Dad was more direct. I never thought you'd stoop this low. Suing your own brother? What would your grandmother think? I think Grandma would be horrified to know that her inheritance was stolen by her own grandson, I shot back. Months have passed since the ruling, and I've only received partial payment. James is dragging his feet, making minimum payments when he feels like it. The money that was supposed to help me buy a home has become a bitter reminder of betrayal. But I've learned valuable lessons from this experience. I've learned that family isn't always the safe haven it's supposed to be. That sometimes the people closest to us are capable of the deepest betrayals. And most importantly, I've learned that standing up for yourself isn't wrong, even when it means standing against family. As I watch my brother continue to live his comfortable life while making minimal efforts to repay his debt, I'm reminded that the true cost of this experience wasn't just financial. It was the loss of trust, the shattering of family bonds, and the painful realization that sometimes the people we love the most are capable of hurting us the deepest. But I'm rebuilding my life. I'm focusing on my career, saving money again, and learning to set boundaries with family. The dream of homeownership might be delayed, but it's not destroyed. And while the relationship with my brother may never be repaired, I know I did the right thing by standing up for myself. Some people say blood is thicker than water, but I've learned that principles should be thicker than both. Because at the end of the day, if we don't stand up for ourselves, who will?